Lots of people in the general public equate politics with corruption and wasteful spending to serve the interest of elected officials. Although that might be the case for some politicians, they do not represent the aim of politics. There are many explanations of what politics is, and a closer look into each of these definitions, one can find that power and influence are, in some level, the driving force of most activities a politician is engaged in. From this perspective, one can argue that all of us are politicians, because at some time or another, we will find ourselves in a position of power and influence, unless we live alone in a desert. As long as there are two people together, power and influence can be exerted in one another in order to set the standards for the relationship. Think for a moment. If you are a father or a mother, you are in a position of power over your children. If you are a sibling, you are also in a position to influence your brother or sister. At work, we also have power over employees or new coworkers. And unquestionably, we have the power to influence our friends and acquaintances. Since we naturally possess the capacity for power and the ability to influence, it begs the question, how have we managed them in our own sphere of action? Have we used power and influence to promote progress, or have we been the cause of chaos or failure in all its aspects? It could be very beneficial if we took a moment to reflect upon these questions, because there is a tendency to criticize politicians without ever analyzing how we have governed our own resources and how we have at times mismanaged as well power and influence in our personal lives. It is true that this analysis might not change a politician's mistake, nor that out of tolerance we should overlook a politician's abuse, but rather it would redirect our attention to where most of our focus should be, on ourselves. It is often said that power corrupts politics, but power itself, it's neutral. It could be used to achieve bad or good results. What corrupts power, which in its turn corrupts a politician, is selfishness. Selfishness is the culprit of everything that causes our modern crisis. Racism, poverty, wars, environmental negligence, etc. Selfishness is expressed in individuals or groups of people. Individually, it can be manifested in a person's greed, jealousy, envy, pride. Collectively, selfishness can manifest in the form of nationalism, which is the love for one's country. But when are we going to gain the wisdom to care for the entire world? How long is going to take us to truly call ourselves civilized by finally putting an end to wars, famine, and hate? Let me be clear by saying that this is not a plea for communism, which didn't work and never will. What we are hoping for is that civilians and politicians alike will consider that governance at its best will be when we will work towards social well-being for all people, and not just one type of people due to its nationality, creed, color, or sexual orientation. I am not also arguing for a central global government. Some might say that this is impossible to achieve, because different types of governments are needed for different kinds of people. That is true. But what is equally true is that we as politicians or civilians have the capacity to care for one another and at last begin a different era of our existence, regardless of where we geographically are located on this planet. Politics also means governance, and there can be no order without governance. According to Allan Kardec, and the works of Dr. André Luiz, one can infer that there is also politics in the spiritual world. But it is not guided by oligarchy, theocracy, plutocracy, monarchy, aristocracy, dictatorship, communism, or even democracy, which inherently has its own flaws. Politics in the spiritual world is dictated by meritocracy. Whoever is in power It's not determined because of the political party they belong to, how much was invested in their campaign, or by the amount of votes he or she received. Meritocracy is governance by merit. He or she can exert power due to their level of knowledge and love accumulated throughout their past reincarnations, which gives them indomitable influence over their subordinates. It is by their merit and wisdom that spiritual politicians govern and are respected. Contrary to what's commonly seen, spiritual politicians, as they escalate the ladder of spiritual hierarchies, they don't amass privileges that others can have, but rather, their state of blissfulness intensifies in direct proportion to how much service they rendered to contribute to all people's progress. In sum, by serving, you're loving. By loving, you are governing where all power ought to influence, in our hearts. In the words of Confucius, if there is righteousness in the heart, there will be beauty in the character. If there is beauty in the character, there will be harmony in the home. If there is harmony in the home, there will be order in the nations. And when there is order in the nations, there will be peace in the world.